Okay, we're live.
All right. Hello, everybody. It is my pleasure to be the moderator of this event today. My name is Gonca Erdemci Tandoğan. I'm an assistant professor of physics at Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. And it is my great pleasure today hosting our panelists, Bri Hart, John Lansley-Gordon, Dr. Yolanda Ohene, Dr. Michael Williams, and Dr. Angela Hall. And today we will start with the introductions first, and then we will have some questions for our panelists. And during this event, feel free to write your questions in the chat as well and raise your hand as we discuss with our panelists. But at the end of the session also, we will have a question and answer part after our structured questions to our panelists. So here I will share my screen and I will let our panelists to introduce themselves. All right. I'm hoping everyone is able to see my full screen. Welcome again to our event today for diverse perspective for advancement toward a brighter future. And we are starting introduction of our panelists. And first, Bri Hart, please, Bri, unmute yourself and introduce yourself to us.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bri Hart. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm really excited to talk to y'all. I think I said morning. It's afternoon where I am. But I'm really excited to talk to y'all today, whatever time zone you're in. So currently, I'm a diversity program manager with the American Physical Society, and my primary role is a program manager for the National Mentoring Community. And in this role, I provide project management and strategic oversight for the National Mentoring Community, which is a mentoring program for minoritized and marginalized physics students. So anyone who identifies as marginalized or minoritized in physics is welcome to join us as a mentee. We have plenty of mentors available for those mentees, but also programming. Prior to that role, I worked at North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I managed a program called WISE, or Women in Science and Engineering. It was a living and learning village for first and second year women and gender minorities in STEM majors. My favorite part about that job was really being able to work intrusively with students on their career trajectory. I also had the opportunity to create a woman of color counter space for program participants. And prior to that, I've held a variety of student services and academic advising roles. I've worked with international students. I've been an athletic academic advisor at North Carolina State University and the University of Georgia, which is also my two-time alma mater. And I'm currently an active mentor for the University of Georgia's alumni mentoring program. So obviously, mentoring is very near and dear to me, both personally and professionally. In the picture, you'll see one of my mentors to the left. That was after I had gotten my master's degree. And then on the right, you'll see me with two of my mentees at NC State. That was actually a few days before I left the university. So really, really focused on centering Black women in my work and in my mentoring. And that's just a little bit about me. And I'm going to run out for like literally 30 seconds to grab lunch because I'm starving and I'm in the middle of a training right now. And I don't want all the lunch to be gone, but I see how my AirPods in, so I'm listening.
Thank you so much, Bri. That's amazing. And our next panelist is John Lansley-Gordon. Please, John, unmute yourself and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks so much, folks. And it's really awesome to be amongst such esteemed company, especially an international crew. It looks like it's 6 p.m. here in London. So really pleasure to be joining you all today. My name is John. I studied physics at Imperial College London way back when, and decided to go into teaching. So I've taught at a variety of state-funded and privately funded schools. We call them secondary, so higher education, all the way up and I'm a former teacher of physics and maths, actually, and assistant head teacher as well. And my specialism is in teaching and learning. And more recently, I've been doing a lot of project work focusing on equality, diversity, and inclusion strategy. So now I work as a development consultant and coach, which means I pretty much go to schools all over the country here in the UK and organizations to look at their inclusion strategy and think about ways that they can improve, particularly with an education focus, and especially with a focus on maths and physics. A few years ago as well, I co-founded and am now managing director of the Blackett Lab Family, which is a network for UK-based Black physicists. And we actually do a lot of outreach style activities, like going into schools and delivering assemblies and classes, really promoting diverse representation of physics and physicists, and ensuring that we revisit the pipeline, the leaky pipeline we call it, to work to increase the number of Black physicists working in and in physics related fields here in the UK as well. So that's a nutshell about me. I'll keep it short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. And our next panelist is Dr. Yolanda Ohene. Dr. Ohene, please unmute yourself. Thank you. Maybe we are having a connection problem. I cannot see or hear. Dr. Ohene. Maybe I move our next panelist to then pick up back. Dr. Michael Williams, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Williams. I am born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States. I have a unique track regarding my PhD. I attended exclusively all historically Black colleges and universities. I received my bachelor's degree in physics from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia in 2009. I received my master in science in material science in 2012 from Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. And I earned my PhD in optics, which is the science of light, from Delaware State University in 2018. My research there was particularly about the investigation of the linear, nonlinear, and fluorescent optical properties of nanodiamonds for photonic applications. Currently, I'm living in Boston, Massachusetts, where I serve as an application specialist for a company called Boston Electronics, which is was a photonics distribution company. Then we enable our customers to develop and manufacture superior products in optics, and we help them perform leading-edge research by providing them with a broad range of advanced electro-optic solutions and knowledgeable application support. So basically, I serve as an application engineer. I am also the founder of Black in Optics on Twitter, which is a space where I try to provide some sort of collaboration and community for all Black students who study optics who may feel isolated over the years because there's hardly any Black students studying optics. However, I also serve with international optics societies called Optica and SPIE. And with Optica, I serve as an ambassador. And through the ambassador program there, I am part of the people who established what is called the Amplify Black Voices in Optics campaign, in which we had just started our immersion program, which allowed near 50 students to come to an optics conference, which was the Frontiers of Optics conference last week in Rochester, New York. And we had over 50 Black students attend their first ever optics conference for the first time. And this was like the largest amount of Black people ever at an optics conference ever in the United States. And so it's just an honor and a privilege to be a part of this program, to try to bring more awareness of the lack of Black students, Black scientists in optics. And we're trying to see if we can have more so that we can further along be a more diverse community within the autism community. So I'm all for doing community service, doing outreach, and I mainly focus on racial diversity and inclusion in the communities, in the organizations that I'm a part of around the world.
Thank you very much. How exciting, Dr. Williams. Thank you very much, Dr. Williams. And we will now move to our next panelist, Dr. Yolanda Ohene.
Oh, hi there. Sorry, my connection just dropped out and it's a little unstable, so I hope that I'm able to last here. But thanks so much for the invitation to speak amongst such other great speakers. And so, yeah, my name's Yolanda Ohene and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Manchester. Maybe it's like the weather is bad here in Manchester, which is causing my network problems, I'm not sure. But basically, I studied physics at Imperial College London. And that was the first time, well, when I've met John, who's also a panelist. And here I was introduced to, or someone who kept an eye out for me, was Dr. Mark Richards. And he's been really a great mentor over the years to help me through the academic pathway. And so after I finished my degree in physics, I went over to France and did a master's in plasma physics, but realized that plasma wasn't really for me. And I ended up doing a PhD in medical imaging at UCL. During this time, we started a minorities in STEM network in the UK, so bringing together STEM researchers from ethnic minority backgrounds. And then following that, I did a postdoc at UCL, and then 2 years ago I moved to Manchester, where I'm part of the neuro imaging group here. And so amongst my research, and so my research is looking at developing MRI techniques to better understand neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease. But also I do quite a lot of outreach and public engagement alongside my research. And so just on the next slide there, I just wanted to highlight a scheme that I put together last year, which was for the International ISMRM Conference, which is the International Society of Magnetic Resonance and Imaging. And so I was part of the public engagement committee for this scheme. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to show undergraduate students the power of research and to bring them along to one of the international conferences, which was based in London last year. So what we did here was we recruited 10 early career researchers from across the UK who were attending the conference and presenting their work. And we linked them up with 10 undergraduate students to give them really a flavour of the work as a researcher and really show them the diverse aspects that medical imaging can bring to them. So that was just one of the schemes that I wanted to highlight in this session, but really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ohene. Amazing. And our next panelist, last but not least, Dr. Angela Hall. Welcome, Dr. Hall.
Hi, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Angela Hall, and I am an associate professor in the School of Human Resources and Labor Relations at Michigan State University. My main area of research is how people manage their accountabilities and how organizations can be held accountable for their actions as well. In addition to being a tenured professor at Michigan State University, I am an executive coach and consultant. And as I speak to you, I'm on my way to one of my consulting jobs right now. I've also been an ad hoc consultant for the U.S. Department of Labor, and I run the Andy Lab, which stands for Accountability, Non-Discrimination, Inclusion, and Employment. As far as my educational background, I got my undergraduate from NYU, and I got my law degree and my doctorate from Florida State. I am a licensed attorney. I've been a licensed attorney for over almost 3 decades now. And so I look at the intersection of law, but how we can make actions in the workplace to make people feel welcome, included, including the notion of, supporting as it's been termed, the leaky pipeline in the STEM field. And some other things that I do, like I mentioned, I explore how individuals can excel and what are the types of circumstances that individuals can do for themselves and organizations, allies, and others can make sure that they thrive in an equitable type of environment, how to attract and retain and develop a sustainable STEM workforce, and also making sure that that leadership are accountable in that they are really accountable for the things that they need to do in order to make sure that the workforce is an equitable one and that they do things to kind of stem that leaky pipeline. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hall. Thank you, each one of our panelists. We will now start our question session. And again, I will pose a question first, and all of our panelists will have a turn answering the question that I asked. But if you have a question from the audience, if you have a question, please raise your hand or feel free to put your question in the chat. And at the end, again, we will have a question and answer session also. So here our first question. As a mentor, how would you advise others to mentor students from a non-physics background to become an achiever in the realm of physics? And if that's okay, I will start asking it. And I see on my screen first, Bri, please.
Thank you. I have the honors of going first again. So I'm not a physicist. I'm an educator by training and by degree. I actually dropped physics my first year in undergrad because I didn't have a mentor, clearly. But I believe in the power of storytelling. Since I've been working in my current role with the National Mentoring Community and with the American Physical Society, I've met so many folks and heard so many stories of folks who did not start in physics at all. There's actually a person I follow on TikTok. I cannot think of his name, but he's like super popular on TikTok now. Like he breaks down literally the universe. I learned so much from him. But his undergrad degree is not in physics, but he wanted to stay in the universe and explore the universe. So he went out and got a physics degree, right? And thanks to the support of mentors, I think amplifying and sharing those stories are kind of like the non-traditional pathway of folks who maybe didn't start in physics, and even folks who do physics but don't look like traditional people who do physics, or who I'll leave it at that. But creating platforms like this to share and amplify those stories and say, like, well, here's an example of someone who, may not have started as physics or may not even look like what we think a physicist looks like, and even challenging what does a physicist look like, right? And really creating space for those stories to be seen and heard. That's my kind of like blanket answer.
Thank you so much. I see, John, you have your
I think it's an interesting question. There are a few things that stand out to me. Is about the becoming an achiever in the realm of physics to someone who is not necessarily from a physics background. And I think the first thing that we could probably explore as a mentor, kind of advising someone else in that mentoring position, would be to clarify what that means to be an achiever. Like what does it mean to achieve in the realm of physics? There are so many different things you could do, or could think about, or could discuss, which would qualify, I think, to achieve. So for somebody who is not necessarily from a physics background, if I was a mentor, I would explore with them what they think it means to achieve, because then I think that you open up way more avenues than potentially traditionally, kind of projected as achievement in physics.
That's an interesting point. Exactly. And thanks. How about Dr. Hall?
Thanks. I think that when you're trying to mentor someone from another background, I think one of the things that you need to do is increase what we would call their self-efficacy, is their belief in themselves, and let them see show the connections of the transferability of the skills, the knowledge they have from another domain and how it maps into their skill set within the physics realm. Another thing is that it takes a village to train a student, and I would encourage them to not break off ties from their other background and try to get a group of people to help mentor them so that they can have a very holistic way in how they're developed as a student.
Great point. Thank you so much. Dr. Williams?
Well, the first thing I will do is to do a practical assessment of their strengths. It is important to just see if they have the technical mindsets to want to go into physics, and just look at the reasons of why they want to transition into physics in the first place. And I would hope in talking with them and mentoring them, I would like to see if they have a problem-solving aspect in their personality that would help them to try to solve the problems that physics students try to solve every single day. And just to make sure they have a firm understanding of mathematics, because you can't do physics without math. They have to like math in order to do it. And I would go from there just to have a foundation of the reasons of why they want to go into physics, if they want to solve particular problems that no one else has even tried to solve, and where they would like to go. What kind of vision do they have for themselves as a physicist if they want to transition from a non-physics background into a physics background, because that's quite a shift. But if you have the right motivation and if you have the right determination, you can make that shift.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Ohene?
Yeah, I suppose I just would kind of echo what Michael said in terms of like the basis of like having the maths background or having or not being scared of maths. I think quite a lot of people come to maybe a bit of a block with, oh no, I don't understand the maths. And so being able to just recognize that it's a way to like interrogate some of the problems and to kind of to not necessarily have to really jump into the deep end, but being able to break down the problems into kind of like the bite-sized chunks to be like, okay, well, what is the angle of physics that you're interested in? And there's many intersecting pathways as well between other fields with physics. And so also kind of building on them as the other figures like Angela and Bri said, taking what their strengths and building on them. So I think just also breaking it down and not being scared, being courageous to go into the discipline.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. These are amazing points. And I'm going to move to our next question, which is, what advice would you give to students or early career scientists on how to remain successful when they experience difficult or non-existent support in the mentorship advisement relationship? Any of you, would you like to go first? Please go ahead, Dr. Williams.
Yes, I know this quite well. I had plenty of situations in my graduate years that really challenged the reasons why I was there in the first place. And I have to go back into the reasons of why. The why you chose to go this particular journey, this particular route. It has to come from going back to what I said, a strong foundation, but it has to be built on something that is firm, that will stand the test of time, and will stand the inevitable onslaught of criticism, self-doubt, and criticism from your peers and even from your mentors and advisors and professors. Once you go back into understanding who you are and knowing that you were built for this particular journey, for this particular path, for this position, or even you are built, you were created to become a PhD, you will understand of the greater responsibility that you have to give to the later generations who are going to come after you. Because in my particular aspects, in my particular perspective, there were hardly any Black PhDs to begin with. If you go back and look at the data, the amount of Black PhDs in 2018, when I graduated, we counted less than 1% in the United States. And if you can understand that you want to be part of that legacy of Black PhDs, not necessarily for anything vain, but to have a genuine responsibility to give hope to people, that will be such a motivator for you to complete, not only to complete, but to be excellent in everything that you do, so that when people will judge your science, they won't have anything to say because you did it excellently, you did it well. So all of that to say is, what is your why of wanting to become a physicist in the first place?
Thank you so much. Bri?
I see Yolanda has her hand raised, so I'll defer to her and then.
Oh, sorry. I thank you so much.
Oh, it's fine.
Yes, thank you so much. Please, Dr. Ohene. Sorry.
I think, yeah, just to follow up from that, I think that support during a PhD and to kind of move through graduate school is essential. And so I think that if you're not getting the support that you need, I think it's really important to be able to go and seek that out in some sort of way, because it's just not possible to be able to complete studies without support. And I think that it's really hard when you're in a difficult situation, because also I think sometimes it's thought that it has to come, advisor should be there to kind of help them. You deserve a nurturing relationship with a mentor is like also a really, really necessary thing to do. And also, I think it's okay to walk away from things that aren't serving you. And I think that's also important, because sometimes we think that we have to push through, but if something's really not serving you, then you don't. There's other ways round. There's other paths that can serve you better. So I think that would be my advice for difficult situations.
Thank you so much. And Bri?
Ditto to all of that. I think it's really important to know that it's okay to know when something is no longer serving you, and it's okay to walk away from that. And along with that, I think it's important to build community. Community is something I wouldn't be here without, and it's something I try to kind of instill with students I work with and support. I know that community may not be within physics, right? Especially if you're on a campus and working with other PhDs and postdocs, finding other folks who, may share similarities in the struggle, to be able to at least have someone who can relate to what you're going through, or who may be able to point you to another resource that you may not have thought about in your insular bubble. I always encourage students to seek out if it's there and available. A lot of the they're called different things on different campuses, but like the Multicultural Student Association, like the Black Student Union, things of that nature, really getting connected and involved there to just find other folks across campus or across other degree programs who you can honestly just connect with and chill with, maybe even not talk about school at all, right? But find an outlet to really build you up and support you in those times that you need it the most.
Thank you so much. John?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, it's kind of broadening. I think people have touched on this. It's broadening the idea of where mentorship comes from, what mentorship looks like, and how you can access those things. Because I was lucky enough when I was at Imperial to have a mentor in Dr. Mark Richards mentioned earlier from Yolanda, and also someone in the year above me, just someone who I looked up to and was going through a similar experience. But those were the only ones. Don't get me wrong, I didn't see them all the time. So it was tough for me as well. I can very much kind of, understand this journey. And I think it was mentioned by Michael earlier, I really had to challenge myself to go back to why I was studying what I was studying and doing what I wanted to do. And really leaning into my skills to think about, okay, what tools do I have at hand to access the things I need, and potentially not in the traditional way. So if I couldn't, for example, talk to Mark one day or talk to my friend in the year above, did I have the internet? Could I go online and look up, some videos or tune into something like this, that would act as a mentor or mentorship type of a thing for me, a resource for me. So I think I would encourage people who are going through something similar to think about the ways that you can access all the different types of resources that are going to meet the same need as a traditional mentor would in person or online or whatever. Because there are books out there are videos out there, self-help guides. There's so much great stuff on social media as well that can really achieve a lot of the same needs and meet the same ends that potentially someone in person couldn't always do anyway. So it's just something to think about there, I think. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Hall?
I think it goes back to my first comments too, that it takes a village to train a student, and that you may need to get mentorship. You should get mentorship from multiple people, whether that's your former mentor or not. I think if politically you can allow yourself to be transferred to another mentor where there's a better fit, I think that is something people should oftentimes explore. I tell people that I had 3 other mentors before I finally my advisor and I chose each other, and it wasn't necessarily because other people weren't good to me. It was that we just weren't the right type of fit. I needed a person probably who was really structured and kept me on a very strict timetable so I could finish my PhD, for example. Another thing that I think is really important, because from the research that I do and the research that actually my advisor, Jerry Ferris, has done on this topic, you need to also make sure that you choose your mentors carefully. A lot of times we like to get a mentor because that person may have some type of similar background or may have some type of demographic similarity as we do, and which is good. Oftentimes we can get that social support, but we need to make sure that we're not like trading social support for the professional technical support either. That's why I say you may need to have multiple types of people. And he actually has a term for it, my former advisor, called political skill deficiency. And that means that people aren't getting the right mentorship from the right people, so they don't know the ins and outs and tips to be successful. So you need to be very strategic when you're also thinking about your mentors, what you can get from which person, and knowing that you may need multiple mentors in order to achieve your goals.
Thank you so much. Great points, and thank you, all of you. And I'm moving to next question, which is what qualities are important for an effective mentorship experience? Share advice on how students or early career scientists should find a supportive mentor. Anyone, would you like to go first?
I'll jump in. Oh, does someone else want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
I am not a true STEM person. I am trained in. I'm a social scientist. But I am not what you would consider a STEM person. But I know that what are some of the effects? What are the types of things that people should look for when they're looking for a mentor. And part of that mentorship is not only that you're looking for a mentor, but you're looking for a sponsor. And I like to describe a sponsor as a mentor on steroids. A sponsor is a person who's been in your shoes before, who can give you career advice, technical advice like a mentor, but that person also has some skin in the game and will always say, you know what, I'm going to open up my professional contacts for you. I'm going to stick my neck out for you. And I'm going to do more than just like give you some pithy comments and then, send you on your way. You want to have someone who has some type of emotional and or some type of career investment for you when you're looking for a mentor.
Thank you very much. And John?
I wholeheartedly agree with Angela there. I thought that was perfectly answered. I'm just going to pretty much parrot exactly what you said. I think there are really interesting models of the differences between mentors and coaches and things like that. But I think in terms of the mentorship model, I can't agree more that a really effective and powerful mentor-mentee relationship is when there is shared skin in the game, I think. And that emotional investment, which a lot of the time, not always, a lot of the time means that the mentor has gone through a similar journey. It just adds an extra dimension to the relationship, which means that there is usually a lot more richness to it. So I totally agree with Angela. I just echo those really well stated points.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ohene.
Yeah, I mean, I also really agree with the sponsor kind of feeling. But I think it's worth mentioning that here in the UK, mentorship isn't as maybe formalized as in the US. And so it's also a bit more difficult sometimes, or I would say maybe in comparison to the US, more difficult to find mentors. But I would say that my advice is to maybe look at people that you admire, and reaching out to them is perhaps a good start for finding someone who hopefully will be aligned with your interests and hopefully can be your sponsor and be your leader.
Thank you very much. Dr. Williams?
I would like to, follow up what everybody has said. It's important to find a mentor who has, you say, the emotional intelligence to cater to your needs. You need to have someone who has empathy. You need someone who can create a healthy environment for you, that whenever you need to share some experiences, that it will be confidential and that you won't fear being blackballed by sharing some, unpopular truths with your mentor of your experience, because sometimes people are afraid that if they speak up, then it's going to derail the career. You need to have someone who understands that, but wants to be able to be vulnerable with you and make you have a safe space for you to vent if you need to heal if you need to, because this journey is going to be harsh. And I think the main vein everyone has said is regarding support, but you need to have a healthy environment in order to succeed. That's the main thing I want to say about that.
Thank you very much. Bri?
Yes, retweet, ditto, amplifying everything everyone has said. And I would also add, as a mentee, it's important to be honest about what your needs are and be unapologetic about that too. Like, I think a lot of times, especially in communities of color, we can be socialized to think that we are asking for too much, right? When we're asking for our needs, but it's okay to say, you know what, this is what I need. This is what I expect from a mentor. And conversely, my I guess like philosophy for seeking out mentors is I want someone who will help me, who will hold me accountable for being my best self and whatever that looks like. So someone who knows, you know, what my goals are, who knows when maybe I'm not putting my best foot forward or not operating at my full and best capacity, but can also create space for those open and honest communication, like Dr. Williams pointed to, so that I can be vulnerable, so that the mentee can be vulnerable, and sharing, you know, what they have going on, what their goals are, but also what the support look like in the situation to help me move forward to being my best self and achieving my goals.
Thank you very much. Great points. And our next question is, what specific skills helped you from professional relationships to build partnership? Specifically, how did you cultivate those skills that made you successful in building partnership? Yes, please go ahead, Bri.
I wanted to amplify something Dr. Ohene said, is really being audacious and asking folks to be my mentor. And I encourage students to do the same thing. I think a lot of times, I mean, there is like a fear and apprehension, like a fear of rejection, or like, what if they say no? And if someone says no, that's not the worst thing that can happen, right? And saying no is a lot less likely than hearing a yes. So don't count yourself out by just not, you know, seeking out supporting help or a mentor, especially if it's someone that you really connect with on whether it's a research level, whether it's a personal level, whether it's someone you think could possibly be a good sponsor for you. And my friends joke with me because I practice it. I literally, if I see someone I like, or I'm like, I really connect with or resonate with their story, I will straight up ask, like, hey, like, are you open to being my mentor? Or can we have a coffee chat so I can learn more about, you know, your career path, your career trajectory? And there was something else. Encouraging folks I work with to do the same thing, students and mentees, to really just be courageous, because even though it's a small task, it's a seemingly small task, you know, to ask someone to be a mentor, it does require a bit of courage to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and ask someone to help and support you.
Thank you so much, John.
Yeah, for me, I struggled with this one a lot through my kind of student years. And I think I was always told that being a good networker is a great skill to have. And I always used to wonder when I was younger, what does networking actually mean? When people say, I'm going to go to a networking event, what does that actually, I see people smiling, because I think everyone feels like this. What does that even mean? How do you strike up a conversation? And in my experience, I've found some really concrete tips, actually, two sides here. The first is really concrete things to remember as almost conversation starters. And the first one for me was really easy to remember. Ask for someone's name and try your best to remember it. The second is to ask what they do and try your best to be actually interested to know the answer to that question. When people say, what do you do? That's kind of automatic. Whereas if you're actually trying to connect, try and find out about the person in front of you. What is it that they're doing? And especially in the context of trying to find a mentor, I'd say really look for someone who you have something in common with. I think we've obviously touched on that, because then that immediately starts a conversation avenue to open up and explore. So if you know in advance the person you're talking to, you can pick up on something that you share in common, a value or an interest, and then you can say, you know, I do the same. This is my, you know, kind of journey with that, or my opinion on that, or whatever. And that really for me helped start to be better at this thing I call networking. And the other side of that is to think really about the kind of two-way exchange of setting up a partnership. One of the big tips I was given whenever I'm thinking of a proposal to somebody, or I'm approaching someone to strike up a partnership, is to not only think about what they can give me and ask for something on my side, but I always have to anticipate what is it, what skill or what value can I offer to them in return. So it's really about that two-way exchange. I'm thinking about if you can give me this, then I can give you this. And that really, I think, has helped me a lot of the you know, on projects and things where I'm thinking about how I can form partnerships. Those are really good professional skills to keep in mind.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Ohene.
Yeah, I was laughing a lot, John, about the networking thing. It's like the doomed networking. And it's funny because I would count myself as like extroverted introvert, like that I can put on like the cloak of like, here we go. But like, I do like actually not having to do that. And also what my point is here is that I think sometimes you can get inside your head a bit and think that everyone's really confident, really, can network really well. But I think the majority of people actually kind of brace themselves for it. So I think having that knowledge, and I think that's quite important, especially if you come from a minoritized group, being Black, being like, say, the only Black woman, you know that you're going to stand out in these situations. And so you kind of have to brace yourself a little more. But I think with the knowledge that even if you might not feel confident, if you're able to find from somewhere, exude some confidence, which can come from actually just doing your research. So just knowing, okay, I want to actually talk to that person. I'm a bit scared about doing that, but if you know a few things about them, then you've got these kind of conversation starters that John was pointing towards. So I just wanted to kind of add that on the back of John's tip. And yeah, I think that just to kind of also echo this, like sometimes be fearless and have the courage, and also in the knowledge that people are also often very open to building partnerships as well, that this thing about actually we're all kind of in the same boat here. And so as much as you think that, oh, no one wants to talk to me, or I don't think they're going to be my mentor, or, whatever those things that are holding you back from kind of making those partnerships, put those to aside for a second and think that, oh, actually someone will be maybe really quite honored if they're asked to be a mentor, or actually they might be interested in the work that you're doing. So yeah, don't forget to, back yourself and remember that, this two-way interaction, that we're kind of all just about in the same boat, let's say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hall.
I'm following up on some really great points that were made. When you network, folks like me who study interpersonal relations, we talk about that there are 3 steps to networking. The first is the initiation, when you go up to someone and you try to find common interests. The second stage is the growth, where you try to continue that the relationship, and the maintenance is when you want to have that relationship solidified over the long term. So the example that I like to give is that, when I go to a conference, I try to meet at least 2 people. And so and then I try to, find something about them. And then that would be the initiation. The growth part would be that if I find something about them, whether it's something personal, like they're a dog lover like I am, or it's something professional that they're interested in a certain area of research, I may find an article or connect them to another person and let them, I give them a resource. That's what we call, give them a resource so they can remember me. And then the maintenance one, and a lot of us aren't that great with the maintenance one, but to maintain those types of connections, because after a while, when you haven't talked to someone, it may seem a little weird too, right? It's what you can do is calendar having some types of communications with people and say, hey, I was just thinking about you, and I made a note that I would follow up with you like a few weeks later. And, to do that periodically so that you can kind of like, when they say you tend to your friends, like you water them, you nurture them, and you need to tend to the people in your network as well. So I really encourage people to do that. I know it's hard, but what you will reap will probably be really worth the effort.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Williams.
Everyone has said some amazing things, so I probably will repeat some things that have been said. I think it's a 2-tier answer from me. One, regarding the mentor, seeking out mentors, is always, we can always have more than one mentor. I think that hasn't been said yet. You don't necessarily have to have one person. You can have a whole, the word is network, a whole network of mentors. Definitely find the commonalities between yourselves, the common interests, the common goals, the common trajectories, the common struggles that other people have had. Learn from their experiences, and definitely use that to help your own path. So definitely seek out on different people to help you. But regarding networking, the word is being courageous. I remember my first conference as a grad student. I went there for a future leaders portion of the conference before the main conference started. And I wasn't necessarily the only Black person there. But I was the only Black American there. And of course you feel isolated, but I knew within myself that I like to be interactive with people. And so, I just dove right in and just started being friendly and just started having, some genuine conversations. Of course, you have the surface layer regarding your research, regarding everything you do, where you're from and everything. But as time went on, the more I showed my personality to people, how genuine I really cared about people, the more they are starting to open up more about themselves. And so now I have a lot of friends all around the world who do not look like me, but are the closest people to me because of those interactions. So we cannot say that we can have a strong, successful career without branching over to the other aisle to people who don't think like us, don't look like us, but they are on the same path as us. So we always have to be sure that we can have not just a strong collaboration among Black scientists, but do it for all people. And so that once you start becoming more effective in your field, all of a sudden people who you haven't even heard of started contacting you saying, well, I'm a friend of such and such, and she told me to contact you. You don't know what kind of success stories or even opportunities that can happen unless you make that effort to go out of your way and being kind. So you wouldn't necessarily say kindness is a skill, but it's a very, very important trait to have.
Thank you so much. And our next question is, what are the most effective ways to engender a sense of belonging in highly competitive spaces like academia or industry as a Black scientist? What creative ways do you pool and share resources or make systems of support that are not available to you because of structural barriers and or bias? Anyone, would you like to go first? Dr. Ohene?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot in this question, I think. I think, first of all, a sense of belonging is a difficult one because I think you often know when you don't have it and when you don't really feel particularly safe in a particular environment. And so I think listening to that in yourself, so that knowing, okay, well, what makes me feel a bit out of here, like interrogating that. And I think that it's quite tough with the kind of the structural barriers because often as Black scientists, it's kind of like on us to try to make the changes. And I think this is where like the mentorship, the sponsorship is really important because having someone more senior who's got your back can really help with a lot of these things so that you don't get basically the extra burden of already these systemic barriers that are in the way. And then you're having to try and fight them as well as trying to just get on with the work that you're doing. And that's a lot. And so I think it's really important to try to surround yourself as much as possible with these types of people who are going to lift each other up and that not all of the burden is on you. And so things like networks, any of the small networks that can be that you can cultivate through your studies, I think are really important. Like for me, I had the minorities in STEM. So it was just like a place where we could vent on Slack and say like, oh, this thing happened. Like these kind of really small microaggressions that people don't realize how much it damages your day and how much it distracts from what you are trying to just do in general in the lab. And so just having a place where you feel safe and that you can, that you're able to share these things, I think is super important. And so I think for people to say like, oh, you know, why are these groups kind of so exclusive? Like, no, they're really, really necessary because it's quite tough out here. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams.
And so, definitely in conversation regarding having the right space to vent, because in my particular background, I had all the HBCUs that I've been to, so I'm able to draw the resources from their support. Particularly, there was a program called it was called the Masters. It was the Fisk Vanderbilt Masters PhD Bridge program, and that program really goes. They really go the extra mile to help our Black scientists, not just physicists, but everyone who works in science, to have a more sort of holistic, not necessarily upbringing, but support within their program. And it really helped me so much. And so a lot of people have used their model to make a clone, if you will, of bridge programs in their own way. And so I definitely use those resources. I definitely use organizations like the National Society of Black Physicists. That was a huge boon for me. And even when I started Blackett Optics, I knew there needed to be a place for Black optical scientists to come congregate and come support each other. And that has morphed into supporting the Amplified Black Voices in Optics program. And you see the fruition that has come from that, seeing how we're now supporting, every year we're supporting 15 people with the Amplified Scholarship, which allows them to have the full support of Optica for the particular research, for their particular matriculation. And so when we have different programs being formed like these, it helps people to thrive so much as Black scientists. So they are affirmed in who they are and not just in the field of what they study. And so it was hard in the past though, because we had stuff like this, but definitely with the established places that I had with HBCUs and NSBP, those places definitely helped a lot of people.
Thank you so much. John?
Yeah, this one is a tough question, I think, because there's so much to unpack, because that word, like engendering a sense of belonging, that like Yolanda kind of touched on, it implies that if, for example, if I don't feel a sense of belonging, which I really didn't when I was at Imperial College, it was tough being the only Black person in a lecture hall full of hundreds of people that didn't look like me, didn't sound like me. Is the burden really on me to then engender my own sense of belonging, and for me to think about how I can create resources or structures for me to not feel like that anymore? That's a really tough question. So what I would suggest is it really depends on the type of personality that the individual who might be considering this type of question has, because some people are really bold to do things like suggest to the powers that be the ways in which they might go about challenging these things, or the culture changes that need to happen. You'll see students at universities, for example, they'll set up certain clubs and societies and things, or they'll make events to do things like this, but then other people don't necessarily feel comfortable doing that. So I think it's a really interesting one to unpack and think about the implications of saying who the burden of burden of proof, I could say, is on to really combat this. So yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think there's always, as I keep kind of alluding to, there are so many other avenues to explore that may not necessarily be immediately obvious to people who are in these environments that, you know, beyond the four walls of the university or the institution or the job you're at, is to think about finding the structures that already do exist, or the forums like we're in now, so we can vent to each other and find people who are like us. There's always a tribe, but whichever tribe you belong to, there's always somewhere where you do belong. And it's about really being bold and brave enough to try and seek those out, and even better to try and then use them to invade the space that you're in. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hall?
So back in 1863, Mary Church Terrell was born, and she was a civil rights advocate, entrepreneur, one of the first African-American women to get a four-year degree in the United States. She graduated from Oberlin. And she coined the phrase that we should lift while we climb, meaning that as we have our own successes, we don't pull the ladder behind us as we go up. We leave it down. We tell people where the ladder is. We help them up the ladder. And I'm lucky that, you know, I'm in a unit that where I'm the only African-American woman, but I get support from not only people who may be in my unit, but I get from a larger community of people of color, whether they're at my institution or at other institutions. Since I've been on this Zoom, 2 emails popped up on the corner of my email that I'm trying not to look at, from people saying, hey, I want to help you do this. And these were people who are more senior faculty of color. And I know that I will probably never be able to pay it back to them, but I can pay it forward. And that kind of culture is something that should be kind of reinforced among communities that are marginalized, that we need to do those 2 things: lift while we climb, and pay it forward.
Thank you so much. And Bri?
I love that quote so much. Michelle Obama has a similar one that she said at the Democratic National Convention a few years ago. But she talked about walking through the door of opportunity. She doesn't close the door behind her, but she leaves it open for other folks to walk through. But something else that comes to mind, like in addition to, accessing our network and finding these counter spaces where we, feel like we belong and we matter. I also like to lean into the power of really speaking to yourself every day. And I like to encourage students. I always tell students, no matter what presentation I do, you belong and you matter, regardless of what the environment looks like, or regardless of what messages you're receiving, whether that's explicit or implicit messages. Tell yourself every day that you belong and that you matter. If you need to write it down, if you need to put in your journal, put in your planner, write it on your mirror. Because I think, starting your day or whenever you have the space to kind of, really sit with yourself and sit with your thoughts, really sitting with the fact that you belong in any room you're in any space you're in, on any campus that you're on. And you're likely probably the smartest person in that room too. So really leaning into that, because that helps build your confidence to be able to ask a mentor, for advice, and to be able to go to a conference and, make new friends and do all these things that we're do all these tangible skills that we're given to you all. It also starts with yourself and really building that self-efficacy to know that you belong and know that you matter. And find spaces that will affirm that for you too.
Thank you so much, all. And our next question is to students actually who don't have supportive mentors but of course need to develop their skills to succeed. So what advice can you provide to students, early career scientists that might find it difficult to bridge the gap between unsupportive mentors, advisors, and cultivating the skills they need to succeed? anyone, would you like to go first? Yes, Dr. Ohene.
Yeah, I think this is kind of perhaps maybe we touched a little bit upon it or before, in terms of like, if it's not supporting you, then like there's that's no good. First of all, like you need to find a supportive environment. Trying to be able to cultivate that is really, really important. And I think kind of thinking about this kind of global community also, that if you're sorry, I just lost all my words there. If your supervisor, your advisor, your mentor is not being supported, then there will be someone out there who will be supportive. And so I think that's just really, really important to remember. And that like basically the world is a lot smaller than it used to be with the internet and these kind of global communities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams.
I believe it's also important to emphasize the fact that if you're having non-support from one's advisor or one's mentor, you really need to count the cost of what you're doing. Because one thing that we need to emphasize the importance of is mental health. So many people have sacrificed their own mental stability for the sake of success. And it has ruined their lives as a result afterwards. So you shouldn't submit yourself to a toxic environment, just to, say that you can do it or you're capable of doing it. Because at the end of the day, your mind and what you think about yourself and how you perceive the world, even your self-esteem, needs to be of the upward importance. And sometimes when you're dealing with professors, they put their own agendas above your mental stability. And to say that your success reflects on them. So it's really a selfish mentality that some people have. And they're saying that they're mentoring you or they're advising you in the right way. So you really need to, like we said, venture out and see the different options that are healthier options for guiding you in where you need to be. Because I would say you need to value yourself. You need to, I would say, what's the right word to say it? Take risk on yourself, bet on yourself. That's the right word. You value yourself well, and you will not allow yourself to submit to any type of environment that will try to demean or degrade who you are and your values.
Thank you so much. And I see John, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Well spotted there. I really like what Michael said there as well about mental health, because I was thinking about the kind of analogy between mentors and how their capacity and therapists. Don't ask me why, but you kind of have the typical model of your therapist, and you kind of don't always know what you're going to get when you go to therapy. Or it doesn't even have to be in the realm of mental health. It can be in any kind of coach or expert. You might go to somebody to teach you how to play an instrument, for example, or you might go for coaching in a sport or a PT at a gym. And it's very much the same case. You kind of have an inkling that they may be able to give you the skills and the guidance that you need, but there's always that period of calibration where you're trialing them for the first few sessions to see if your values align, if they're going to be able to connect with you in a way that you wanted, but also I'll throw in here in ways that you don't expect, because I always find the most effective experts who I lean into for their expertise not only give me what I need and what I think I need, but they also give me what I need that they know I need that I don't realize. I hope that made sense. Yeah. So it's really a case of understanding that the mentors are hopefully the people who are able to almost give us kind of weigh us up and give us a prescription about, you know, what we need, and that's not always conscious to us as well. So I would recommend that there's this calibration period initially, which takes a bit of self-assessment to understand really critically what it is that you need as a person, and then that calibration period to try it out and to see, you know, are they fulfilling those needs, and are they giving me other things that I didn't necessarily anticipate.
Yes, thank you so much. And Bri?
Yes, I wanted to follow up on some of those comments, especially as it relates to having our needs met, and mentees having their needs met. Goes back to something I said earlier, being clear about what your needs are, because it's kind of hard to identify when your needs aren't being met if you don't even know what it is that you need to begin with, right? So starting there, but also I think even in a successful like mentor-mentee relationship, and if a mentor is showing up, you know, in a way that is safe and healthy for the mentee, that mentor still may not be meeting all the mentee's needs. So I think everyone has alluded to the fact that, you know, it's okay to branch out and have more than one mentor, and your advisor doesn't have to be your, you know, catch-all of everything, right? There may be some things that your advisor can help you with that another mentor may be able to fill in the gaps as well. So really, A, taking the time to assess what your needs are, and B, seek out what that support may look like, even if it's not just with your one mentor or advisor that you have. It's okay to have, in the program I manage, we call it a constellation of mentors. It's okay to have a constellation of mentors and support. I mean, even it's okay to have peer mentors. It's okay if folks that, you know, are even in another program are able to provide help and guidance about something that you may not be as familiar with, and vice versa. It's okay for you to show up as a peer mentor to other folks as well.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Hall?
So I say this knowing that some situations are untenable, that people are in relationships with their mentors, which are actually abusive. It's bad for their mental health. And I am not talking about I'm not talking about those at this point, because those require an escalated higher level of intervention, including going to people who are like, you know, maybe deans or chairs, or, you know, whatever type of university structure that you may have. But let's say you just have a mentor who just doesn't invest in you in the proper type of way. Things that you need to do is to include advocating for yourself the way you would advocate for another person. A lot of times and my own research has found this, we're oftentimes more supportive of other people than we are of ourselves when it comes to speaking up for their rights. That's something that, you know, that takes a little bit of time, because many of us have been socialized not to be that way. But it's a hard thing to overcome. Another thing is to use what kind of political skills that you have, in a sense that, for example, if you align yourself with another faculty member who is someone who is high power and someone who has taken an interest in you, just by some type of, for lack of a better term, social shaming, your mentor will say, hey, I need to step up because I don't want to be compared to this other person who may be potentially making me look bad. There's also strength in numbers, having a coalition with other doctoral students, with junior faculty, with other faculty who will support you, are another ways that you can navigate the situation, which is very fraught with long-term situations, because the advice though that I was given when I was a student was that, what did one of my mentors say? It's a small profession, a long career. So you can't afford to make enemies, so to speak. But you have to balance that with the notion that if you're being treated badly, you do have to speak up. But there are other sometimes, but in situations not involving like abusive supervision, or just some gross misconduct, or totally being neglectful, there's some political types of moves that you can do. And once again, you need to understand that there's strength in numbers.
Thank you so much. I know it is 2:17, and I have more questions here, but first I would like to give chance to our attendees to ask questions. So please feel free to type your question in the chat box, or please raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask the question if you have questions. So this is time for our attendees. And I will give some time if you have questions. And looking here at my chat as well. All right, so please feel free to type or raise your hand. And meanwhile, I'll continue with our next question, but please feel free to type again, and we'll just interrupt and move forward. So our next question is, how do we join efforts to build stronger partnership with individual students and also with establishments? So I will ask our panelists, whoever would you like to go ahead. Probably will not have time for each one of you, unfortunately. Anyone, would you like to go?
So I just want to say, as someone who works at a professional society, I would actually love to hear from maybe some of the other panelists about ways that, especially societies that have been historically exclusive, like the American Physical Society, like what are strategies and ways that folks can do better, myself included as a proxy of the organization, to what could I take back to really advocate and support marginalized and minoritized folks in business.
I'll go. So, starting with one of the international organizations I've been involved with is SPIE, and it stands for the Society for Photo Instrumentational Engineers. And particularly, I started to basically just show up and just be, not necessarily be a presence there, but to talk to different people, especially people who were part of the programming committee and who were involved with more so developing more EDI initiatives with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I told them about my concerns, that there's hardly anybody at these conferences that look like me. And for me to feel welcome there, I need to know how serious they are in reaching into my community, because I think sometimes these international committees, they're waiting for us to come to them. But what I had to show them that because we're necessarily comfortable in that particular environment, because of the fact that we feel we are being judged as soon as we step into those circles, that all of a sudden everything they think about Black people all of a sudden is heaped on that particular one person that shows up. Sometimes we feel intimidated. And we need to make sure that we provide a place where they are welcomed and that we desire them to be there. And so, it was and quite honestly, quite sadly, this happened more so after what happened in 2020 with George Floyd. But because of that, I put on myself to put on, make sure that I provide that program, that space for people to say, hey, we are here and we are not invisible. We want our science to be challenged and not disregarded in any manner or fashion. And so like I would say the main thing we have to do is continue to show up in places that are not comfortable with us, that we don't feel comfortable being in. But we have to find those people in the organizations who feel the same way. I think that the more people you have, the stronger voice you have. And that creates the power to create change. Or else I would have not been able to go to these conferences and have the full support of the leadership. I'm talking about people that had no Black leadership ever in their organizations. But because of them knowing me, because of the fact that I showed up year after year after year after year, made myself available. And when the unfortunate opportunity came at the end of 2020, they allowed me to have that space to create at first an informal meetup for Black scientists at these optics organizations, at these optics conferences. And that started from 2020, and I've been having one every single time I had a conference. And people are coming to them, they are more receptive, and they are allowing the people there to they're allowing the scientists to be there and to share their stories. This has not happened before. But I think the more so that we showed up and we stayed consistent in that, and we weren't afraid to show up there, the more so they began to understand that we have a voice and that they allowed our voices to be heard. And so I would just say, just continue to show up.
Thank you so much. And we have two questions here in the Q&A box. So I'm going to read the first one. I wanted to ask, how do you apply these lessons here to your own strategies of mentoring students? So any of our panelists, please unmute yourself if you'd like to go answering this question. I want to ask, how do you apply these lessons here to your own strategies of mentoring students?
I'll go. I think that as a baseline, like seeing people as unique and individual and trying to recognize their needs is like a good place. It's a good place to start. And I wanted to also kind of highlight this something that we haven't really talked about in this session, but like this kind of idea of excellence. Well, excellence, that's good, but like perfectionism sometimes also is it can be rather damaging, especially in academic spaces. And so I think that I wanted to highlight that, because just to recognize like everyone's got their strength in a particular area. And so being able to nurture that and trying to recognize that in people is, I think, really important, and kind of trying to not push for what we see as I think what I want to say is that there's many forms of success. So trying to understand of your mentees, what does success mean to them? What does that look like? And trying to cultivate that.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to ask the next question as well, which is, what is your approach to initiating a peer mentoring relationship? Anyone, would you like to go? Yes, please, Dr. Hall.
So I think that it starts early on when we have, for example, senior grad students mentor more junior grad students mentoring undergraduates, bringing people together, and also the notion of doing what we call reverse mentoring. When you have people who are younger or more recently have been trained on something, teaching people who have done it for maybe they haven't done it for a long time, or things are outdated or changed. I can tell you that my PhD students, a lot of them are better in some aspects of statistics than I am, because they've done it more recently than I do. I just had to ask one of them, how do you do a cluster analysis? Because it's been a minute since I've done a cluster analysis. And so those types of things where you where you model the behavior you want to see, give people baby steps to do the mentorship, incentivize it, create a culture of it, are all really helpful things, and also builds that lift while you climb type of culture.
Can I just jump in quickly about the reverse mentoring? Because I think there's been a bit of a, in the UK, because mentoring isn't such a big thing, but then suddenly it has arrived that there's a reverse mentoring. And so I think that there's kind of a bit of a backlash about that, to say that, oh, like, you know, the senior staff are now expected to be taught by, like, I mean, I think it's in the context of when the senior staff haven't given anything to the junior staff, and then now this expectation of, like, oh, we're going to do reverse mentoring. I think in that case, you just have to be careful that, you know, that you're getting all of your needs met, and if you're not, then I think that's then perhaps it can go in the reverse direction. And there's been a bit of maybe a bit of debate about that in the UK.
Thank you so much. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I would like to ask one last question, which is, how do we get away from the traditional narrative of what it means to be successful and leverage through mentorship and partnership? Any of our panelists, would you like to go?
I can jump in. I think first, going back to what I always go back to, it starts on the inside and really defining what success means to you. You know, for some folks, you want to win the Nobel Prize, like, go for it if that's your thing. For some folks, I just want to finish this PhD program so I can go on about my life, and that's okay too. But to points that folks have made before, like not putting so much pressure to be perfect or to be excellent at all things all the time. No one can do that. That's not an attainable goal, but really setting your own measure of success and being okay with that, and finding folks who will help you achieve that level of success, whatever it is.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I think the institutions that are putting on mentoring programs, I think is really, really important to define the parameters about what they want from a mentorship program and what skills and values, qualifications, experience they would like from the mentors, because in doing so, you can then shape what narrative of success will look like. Because I think then once you have those parameters really clearly defined, then hopefully it will lead on to things like, well, do we want to continue looking in the traditional pools for mentors? Do we want to always go to the, you know, the heads of departments and the deans and the higher ups? Or can we start thinking creatively about where we find our mentors? Because then it's going to start to paint a different picture about what it means to be successful or you know, pursue a career in physics or whatever you think about. So I think it's really important to define those parameters and exactly what you want out of a mentorship scheme first, before then thinking about where potentially these people come from.
Thank you so much. And it is 2:30 p.m. I know this has been amazing. Great points and great advice. This has been really a pleasure. Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the panelists and also all of our attendees. And thank you so much for joining us from an evening time all around the world. And I wish you a wonderful day or evening, depending on where you are. Thanks a lot.
Recording stopped.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.